You already knew the truth about yourself, but you had trained yourself to look away. You've trained yourself to treat discomfort as danger, and now you live in a room with locked doors you pretend are open. The people who tell you what you need to hear don't stay around for long, and the ones who remain have learned what not to say in your presence. You say you want growth, but what you actually want is affirmation that you're already growing. You say you value honesty, but you punish it the moment it arrives in a form that doesn't flatter you. Someone tells you something real about your work, your behavior, the way you handle conflict, and you hear it as an attack. Your face doesn't change, but your body does. You pull back, and you get quiet. You remember that comment for weeks, not because you're reflecting, but because you're building a case against the person who delivered the words. You don't argue in the moment. You just stop trusting them, and the next time they speak, you're already measuring their words for hidden cruelty, already deciding they don't understand you, already writing them off as negative or jealous. This happens so smoothly you don't even notice the pattern. You think you're protecting yourself. You think you're maintaining boundaries. You think you're refusing to tolerate disrespect. What you've actually done is teach everyone around you that truth has a price, and the price is your withdrawal. They don't get a conversation. They get distance. They get the quiet recalibration of your trust. And because most people would rather be close to you than correct you, they adjust. They stop saying the hard thing. They stop pointing out the pattern. They start editing themselves before they speak, running everything through a filter that asks, "Will this make you pull away?" The relationship doesn't end. It just becomes lighter, safer, less useful. You still talk, but now the conversations stay on the surface, where nothing you say can be wrong because nothing you say really matters. You tell yourself this is you being selective about who you let in. You tell yourself you're just done with people who don't communicate kindly, who don't know how to deliver feedback with care. You've built an entire framework around it, something about energy protection, or not accepting negativity, or only surrounding yourself with people who see your potential. It sounds healthy. It sounds like something a therapist would affirm in a session about boundaries. And because the language is right, you never stop to ask whether the boundary you've built is actually protecting you, or just keeping you small. You don't see that what you're calling protection is just permission to stay the same. You don't see that the people you've labeled as harsh or unsupportive are often the only ones who cared enough to risk your reaction. The ones who stay are the ones who decided you're not worth the risk. This isn't happening loudly. No one sits you down and tells you they have stopped being honest with you. They just stop offering the observations that used to come naturally. When you ask for feedback, they give you the soft version. When you talk about your goals, they nod and encourage, but they don't mention the obvious gap between what you say you want and what you actually do. When you make the same mistake again, they don't bring it up, because the last time they did, you smiled and agreed in the moment, then spent the next month proving to yourself why they were wrong. They've learned. Not that you're a bad person, just that you're not someone who can be helped by the truth. So they save their honesty. They give their real observations to people who can actually use them. And you never find out, because the absence of honesty doesn't announce itself. It just leaves you operating on incomplete information, wondering why things don't change, why opportunities don't land, why you feel stuck in ways you can't name. The pattern compounds in ways you don't track. You apply for positions you're not quite ready for, and no one tells you why you didn't get them. You pitch ideas that have visible holes, and the room goes polite instead of engaged. You talk about projects you're going to start, and the people listening have heard these promises before, but they nod anyway because challenging you means enduring the subtle punishment of your disappointment. You've created a social environment where managing your feelings has become more important than managing reality. The people around you are not your allies anymore. They're your handlers. They've learned to navigate you, the way you navigate a child, with careful omissions, strategic praise, and the quiet acceptance that certain conversations will never be worth having. You don't notice the shift because the people doing this are still kind to you. They still laugh at your jokes. They still respond to your messages. They still show up when you ask. But they've reclassified you. You're no longer someone they bring problems to. You're no longer someone they test ideas against. You're no longer in the room when difficult decisions get made, because your presence would mean either lying to you or dealing with your reaction to the truth, and both options cost more than excluding you. The exclusion is so smooth you mistake it for respect. You think they are giving you space. You think they are being considerate of your time. You think the reason you're not involved is because you've moved beyond that level of operation. You don't realize you've been quietly demoted to a social role that requires nothing from you except your absence from conversations that matter. Nietzsche saw this mechanism everywhere. He didn't frame it as weakness in the physical sense. He framed it as a structural inability to remain stable under the weight of reality. The weak person requires a controlled environment to function. They need their self-concept protected, their narrative affirmed, and their version of events left unchallenged. Truth becomes unbearable not because they are fragile, but because they've built their entire psychological infrastructure on foundations that can't survive contact with certain facts. When someone offers them an accurate reflection, they are not just rejecting information. They are defending against collapse. The story they tell themselves about who they have always been carries the weight of their entire identity. It holds up their sense of competence, their belief in their own judgment, their faith that they are moving in the right direction. Letting in data that contradicts that story doesn't just hurt their feelings. It threatens the entire system. So they protect themselves the only way they know how, by deciding the person delivering the truth is wrong, cruel, biased, or operating from a place of misunderstanding. They don't do this consciously. They do it automatically, the way your body flinches away from heat before you've decided to move. You've done this more times than you can count. Someone shows you a blind spot, and you treat the observation like an assassination attempt. You don't yell. You don't defend yourself out loud. You just quietly downgrade that person's credibility in your internal hierarchy. You tell yourself they don't know the full context. You tell yourself they are projecting their own issues onto you. You tell yourself they've always been a little negative, a little critical, a little too focused on flaws instead of strengths. And because you can build a case for any of these interpretations, you never have to sit with the possibility that they are right. The discomfort dissolves. The relationship cools. And you move forward with one less source of accurate information about yourself. The cost isn't immediate. The cost is cumulative and silent. Every time you reject a piece of honest feedback, you lose access to a perspective that could have corrected your course. Every time you punish someone for telling you the truth, you train everyone else to lie by omission. Over time, you end up surrounded by people who've learned that protecting your comfort is more valuable than protecting your progress. They're not bad people. They're just people who've done the math. Being honest with you costs them your trust, your warmth, your availability. Staying quiet costs them nothing. So they stay quiet, and you interpret their silence as agreement. You think the fact that no one's challenging you means you're finally getting it right. You think the absence of criticism means you've outgrown the need for correction. You don't realize you've just successfully trained everyone around you to stop investing in your development. The world doesn't owe you honesty delivered in a way that feels good. The people who can actually see your blind spots don't always have the time or emotional bandwidth to package their observations in language that won't trigger your defenses. Sometimes the truth comes rough. Sometimes it comes from people who are frustrated with you. Sometimes it comes in a tone that feels harsh because the person delivering it has watched you ignore the gentle version 5 times already. And when you reject it based on delivery, you're not protecting your boundaries. You're just making yourself unteachable. You're deciding that your comfort in the moment is more important than your competence over time. And maybe that's a trade you're willing to make. But you should at least be honest with yourself about what you're trading away. The people who've stopped being real with you didn't disappear. They are still in your life. They still care about you in a general sense. But they've moved you into a different category. You're someone they are nice to, not someone they are honest with. You're someone they include socially, not someone they collaborate with on anything that matters. You're someone they keep at a distance that feels like closeness because you're so used to distance that you can't tell the difference anymore. When they have a real problem, they don't bring it to you. When they need actual feedback, they go to someone else. When they are building something that requires truth-telling and course correction, your name doesn't come up. Not because they don't like you, because they've learned that involving you means managing your feelings instead of solving the problem. And that's a cost they are no longer willing to pay. Nietzsche called this the revenge of the weak against themselves. They don't punish the world. They punish the people who try to make them stronger. They reward the people who let them stay comfortable. Then they live with the consequences of a life built on comfortable lies. They wonder why success feels unstable. They wonder why respect feels performative. They wonder why relationships feel shallow even when they are long. They don't connect it to the fact that they've spent years training everyone around them to prioritize their comfort over their growth. They don't see that the softness they've demanded has made them brittle. They don't realize that the protection they've built has become a cage. You're living in that cage right now. The bars are made of all the honest conversations people decided not to have with you. The lock is your own reaction to discomfort. And the key is something you threw away years ago when you decided that anyone who made you feel bad about yourself must be doing something wrong. You can stay there if you want. Most people do. They live their entire lives in rooms that get smaller every year, surrounded by people who've learned that honesty is a violation and silence is kindness. They call it peace. They call it maturity. They call it knowing their worth. What they don't call it is what it actually is. A systematic elimination of every force that could have pushed them past who they currently are. The people who would tell you this have already stopped telling you anything that matters. The ones who remain will nod and smile and agree with whatever story you're telling yourself this week. They'll validate your complaints. They'll affirm your decisions. They'll never once mention that you've been making the same mistakes for years, that your blind spots are visible to everyone but you. That the gap between who you think you are and who you actually are has become a chasm you can't see because you've surrounded yourself with people who've agreed not to point it out. You've won. You've successfully created a life where no one challenges you. The cost is that no one challenges you. And everything you could have become is on the other side of conversations you've made impossible to have.